This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. I kind of feel like Brian Williams of MSNBC. I want to say like this is day 91, but it's probably only 60 something days into the pandemic, which is obviously caused the NBA season to be postponed until further notice. But in the meantime, it's just really encouraging to see, especially where I live in the tri-state area, people really taking heed to the policies of exercising social distancing. I know it's really hard for people, but I think when you think about it, and, my man who I'm bringing on right now, my partner in crime, we talk about it all the time, that what we're doing now is going to be for the greater good of tomorrow. So let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my brother, Warren Shaw, who is very, very socially distant from me right now, even though we have two microphones. You've been exercising social distance with me, I want to say, for like 8 years now?
More or less what it looks like, bro, and how it's been for the longest time since the first iteration of our show, before iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and sponsors and the whole nine. We've been at this thing a long time,
right?
Not even
we were practicing this social distance. We knew one day it was gonna come in handy, right? We just didn't recognize that it was like to this extreme.
Nah, for real. But as I said, man, not even Corona can stop the show. We're going to keep pushing, bringing you content, and we're not struggling. We're not struggling for it because there's just
no, man. The NBA does a really good job of giving us a reason to keep talking about them. It's going to get to a point where we're going to be like, y'all need to keep our names out your mouth. That's what it's getting to. So. But
loving it, bro.
But listen, as always, man, we appreciate those who have been tuning in. And, we're always going to try to find, something for us, to discuss. And it, whether it be something just, coming off the top of our head, or it's actually generated from, the going-ons of the NBA. We're going to try, as always, to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening. So once again, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us. Be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at Game Face Lead, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms, whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. Just look for the Baseline NBA podcast. Add us to your playlist. Kick back, relax, and let us get you in tune, in sync with everything happening in the association. So this is going to be somewhat of a different formatting of our show. I know a lot of times we like to come in with the realness in our segment called The Breakdown. But there's been so many little things happening right now in the association that we felt it, pertinent to try to highlight a lot of these things going on. So just consider this our extended version of going coast to coast. Coast to coast! Like always, man, a lot of stuff can always happen, within a week's time frame. We've been fortunate to do the show once a week, but there's always things that are happening intermittently between the periods of when we record our podcast and, or when our show gets released. And, we want to make sure that some of these things are, being discussed and highlighted. And, like my man Shaw always says, man, never leave a stone unturned. So this is exactly what we're going to do. So right now, with where everything is, the NBA has made efforts, right, Shaw? In its regards to trying to keep us, preoccupied, knowing that the NBA season could eventually be suspended indefinitely. There may not be a regular season, may not even be a playoffs. And that uncertainty, has the, NBA and its partners, pulling out the stops, man, with regards to, trying to find some kind of way to keep their fan base entertained and enthralled in whatever's going on with the game.
100%. The league is innovative in all ways, and we have to continue to appreciate their efforts in that. Now, again, not everything is going to be amazing, not everything is going to be the stuff that we're used to, but I think right now we are starved enough to recognize that, hey, content is content, and we're just happy to see players of the NBA, WNBA, or whoever interacting and talking. I think some of the greatest things about this is we're getting all these great stories and these Instagram lives with players and things of that nature, but the league and ESPN, I think, has done a pretty good job of trying to figure out innovative ways, and they've partnered with 2K, and now we got a horse thing we're going to talk about as well too, where they just want to make sure that the people feel connected to the brand of the league itself and the players as the faces of that league. And again, I'm just very excited to see that the content is diversifying in these quote unquote uncertain times. We have to just be new consumers of it. I think we have to let our guards down a little bit, our innate need and nature to kind of just be pessimistic and sarcastic and snarky about everything that's out there. Again, not everything is going to be what we're used to, but at least it's something. And that's the way, and that's definitely the mindset I'm taking from it.
It's funny to me, Shaw, like everything over the last 10, 15 years has been centered around one particular format, right? Like it seems like it's taking a little bit longer for us to recognize that there's so many other spaces beyond what's just in front of us. And listen, I give the NBA credit, man, because they've allowed us all to kind of follow in line, with where they want to go, with what they want to do. And they don't venture off too much, in all of these different little entities in different spaces, which I think then gives opportunity for us to have a growing appreciation when something or some entity is on the come up. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there was a time when the NBA was more legitimate than the idea of going out and playing basketball blacktop style, right? And then came and one, right? And then after and one, came all of these different opportunities for us to go back and remember, hey, this is where the game came from. It didn't come from a gym, and parquet floors. That came after the growth of the sport. And so I say all of that to bring it back full circle with this. Like, there is a growing culture out there with people who appreciate the NBA 2K brand. There is a balance with regards to how young kids keep themselves enthusiastic about thinking about the game, playing the game, if they're not on a basketball court actually shooting, or on, inside the gym playing with their team, trying to win a game for their high school or for their AAU team, or, for their university. You know what I'm saying? Like, so all of these different little pockets are now coming to fruition, and they're actually stepping out in the forefront to tell more about how players stay in the game even when they can't play the game.
Yeah, the storylines is what we're looking at, right? And you want to see how the storylines can develop and change. And what I don't think was fully understood as this whole thing kind of unfolded, so to speak, is we just didn't know what things could be. We didn't know what type of content could be created. And it's forced everybody to be innovative. It's forced everybody to really go into these little think tanks and figure out what are ways that we can stay connected and make sure our brand in some ways doesn't lose its credibility, but understand that we have to deliver our content in a unique and divisive, not divisive, in a different way rather. And that is definitely happening, I think, with certain things that are taking place within the league, all of its properties and all of its business partners associated with it. And that, to me, is, again, that's commendable.
All right. So there are two events, within this time frame that Sean and I are discussing, in which the NBA is, again, trying to stay in a space where they are relevant, they're active, and they're trying to keep their fan base engaged, even though physically they can't go to arenas and watch their favorite teams play or watch the superstar in action. So the idea here of the NBA having a horse competition, which is featuring, some of the current stars of our league like Trae Young and some iconic, players, like Tamika Catchings, who now is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, Chauncey Billups, Paul Pierce, Zach LaVine's also going to be involved, Allie Quigley, and Chris Paul. I like it. I like that they're trying to be creative. I like the idea that they're trying to, put this in a way where, hey, they want there to be an entertainment value to this, but I think they want to keep it within where people can look at it and still take it somewhat seriously. Like there is still a level of competitiveness that can be had by it. I would just say, Shaw, interestingly enough, that rather than this being a horse competition, right? I would have rather just being like a 3-point shootout or something. I think that this would have been a great opportunity for the NBA to again rekindle and revitalize our All-Star Weekend angst that just recently had taken place. And you know what I'm talking about. Have the 3-point shootout, right? The skills competition, doesn't really matter to me too much. But the 3-point shootout in the slam dunk contest, I think would have been great opportunities. One, to really put people in that notion that just dunking inside an arena is one facet to it. But where it really starts is whether or not cats got them hops, on their home court, on the blacktop. You get what I'm saying? Shooting that 3 ball with all of the variables that come into play. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, those kind of challenges, I really think bring us closer to home. Because what happens when we watch a basketball game, right? We watch our favorite team or favorite player do the impossible. What does that make you want to go do? Pick up the basketball and go run out to your local park and go play hoops.
I mean, to each his own. I mean, I think there's some points to what you're saying, but there's also some complications to them as well too. I think horse is probably the safest thing that these players can do in terms of even kind of keeping up with their quote unquote cardio, and not necessarily cardio, but rather making sure that they're not putting themselves at risk of injury. Like a dunk contest, and you haven't really been playing and haven't been doing all the things that you ordinarily do. There's risk of injury there and things of that nature. And then I guess, how do you judge it, or whatever the case may be? Like, I don't know. So like, I'm not so interested in that as much as that the 3-point thing is interesting. But I mean, then, there's logistics of that. I mean, do all these players, yes, they're millionaires, so to speak, but do they have, it's not as easy as like a 2K tournament where you can just download the 2K thing. So you got to have whatever it is, 30 basketballs, and you got to have 5 or 6 racks, and, and you have to have obviously the access to the court, which you assume these people do have, with, even playing in the horse competition. So there's logistical concerns and other things that I think come play with this. And I'm not just saying to just take whatever they shovel, and say, okay, well, this is good, and we just be happy that we got it. But I think in some aspects, there just needs to be some concessions that need to be made, and understanding, okay, not everything is going to be amazing, but they are trying, and I think they'll get better, as long as this thing continues to impact us from a societal standpoint. They're going to come up with different ideas. And I shout out guys like Trae Young and Zach LaVine, because they're all over the place. Like, they're going to be in both of these things. That
they get it, right? They
participate.
But guys like Trae Young, he gets it. They are the next generation, and they know that their brand means something. And they have accumulated all of that understanding, because of the Kobe Bryants and the LeBron Jameses and the Steph Currys of the world. So that, to me, I totally get. I think guys like Paul Pierce and Chauncey Billups, who kind of came before the boom of the social media thing, I think that this is kind of good for them, because they represent, the ESPN brand. And listen, let's not sugarcoat anything. ESPN has been on this balancing act with their with regards to the credibility, percent. Like, you got a Rachel Nichols, and then, you got a guy like, Richard Jefferson. And, sometimes you can't tell whether or not some of the comments that are coming from these guys, who are former players, are there to actually provide insight or incite, you know what I'm saying? Like, debates and controversy and things of that nature. And I think when I see these guys coming out and wanting to do things, I want them to do it in what's made them great. I don't necessarily see Paul Pierce as a dude, playing horse. I'm just saying just to me, and I'm going to push back a little bit on your thought process about not making it work. I think it can work. I think if you did this, on the court style, you get like 10 basketballs. It's not a question of, okay, grab the ball, shoot. Hey, you've got certain amount of makes. How many threes can you make, out of so many shots, and just go from there. You know what I'm saying? I think that there's an authenticity about that even people can identify with, because that's what you had to do. When you were practicing, you didn't have 20 basketballs at your disposal. You only had the 2 and the people rebounding the ball and kicking it to you and you shooting the basketball. To me, I think that you can get away with doing it with the smartphone. The logistics to me, I don't think matter as much if all they're doing is shooting the basketball and they're doing it in competition to the next person. How many times can they make those shots? The dunking part, to your point, I guess I get it. But yeah, I think these dudes, if they really wanted to go out and do it, they had been doing it anyway, regardless of whether or not they fear injury or anything like that. To me, these cats get injured running up a hill, let alone, jumping and dunking on their own.
Yeah, and I get that. But I think, from the team standpoint, it's, there's just a PR thing to it. It's just like USA basketball, last summer when everyone pulled out. I want to focus on the season. So during this time, if someone, goes into like some sort of dunk competition or whatever the case may be, that's now televised and aired, it's just, I don't know, it's bad aesthetics. Cause like, let's say this thing gets solved in the next couple of weeks and now somebody's out now for 3 months and participating in a dunk contest they wouldn't have participated in. Your point about the 3-point thing, I mean, I get it. Again, obviously amendments need to be made in this time. So sure, it can't be the typical 5-6 racks or whatever it is, if it's just one rack or just a bunch of balls or whatever. And my point to all of that is just saying is that I think they are trying little by little. So more ideas are going to come along as we move forward. So that's why I say I don't want to be too critical about what we're seeing thus far. I think they're going to continue to pump out stuff as this thing continues to impact our lives in the way that it has been. And we may see a 3-point contest. We may even see a dunk contest. We may see whatever type of contest, as these social distancing things are consistently in place.
Well, let me just say this. I get another reason why they want to do like the horse competition, because I think if you did this thing in partnership with, say, like Facebook, right, who owns Instagram, and Instagram is notorious for all of these crazy challenges that are going on right now, right? Like that is your source to see the next challenge that people that are being posed, and then you're just adding someone and they're going out there executing whatever the challenge was that's been posed to them. So I get the idea of them trying to trend in that way. My fear is it's not like they haven't tried this horse competition before. You remember they tried doing this during All-Star Weekend. How did that pan out, right? So that's my point. Like I understand if you're trying to genuinely do horse. Maybe if you've got people who actually do it to that degree, like if you had Steph Curry in it, I think then it adds credibility to that, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of these people that you have here, these people are natural shooters. So make the competition about what they do best, because that's when we want to see these people at their best. You know what I'm saying? Because if not, then we have to take it kind of like, it's kind of a joke, and they're taking it lightly. And I get that, but I'm just saying for credibility's sake of why you're even putting that out there, put these guys in the best possible position for them to succeed in that what you're trying to reflect. If you are NBA or if you are ESPN, whatever you're building around that part of it, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just saying the space in which they're doing it. To me,
I don't disagree with any of that, but here's the one thing I'm gonna say about the horse competition and why it could be interesting. I think if it's something where it's just like, hey, I shot a 16-footer or I shot this 40-footer, if you're talking about guys like Curry or even Trae Young, participating in it, then that's one thing. But what these people do on a regular basis, the trickery, the things that they do in their training that we do not see behind the scenes, here's why I think it could potentially be really cool and has the opportunity to be interesting, because they could pull out some trick shots that they would have no business or reason or technically are not legal to do in an NBA game, and that could provide the entertainment value in that of itself. I've been watching a bunch of these training videos and see what some of these players do, and I'm like, that's madness. You know what I mean? Like, why do you train like that? Because in some ways, I think that's probably a knock on some of the training industry sometimes too. It's like you do stuff in your training and drills that you could never physically do in a game. game, but it's the human feat, that the human aspect that you're just like, wow, that's surprising that they have the ability to do that at the level that there are. Like I watched a video you're talking about on Instagram, the other day, just Simone Biles, where she's doing a handstand, and I mean, and it is kind of ridiculous, but it's just like when you think about the physical strength and the skill that she's doing a handstand, she's taking off her sweatpants with just her feet while she's doing a handstand. It's bananas to me. And I'm trying to liken that to, I think, what some of the shots that these players can potentially do, from whether it be from crazy distances, whether it be with their offhand, or using different obstacles in essence to make things. That's why I think this can have some interest, for the public. And again, to my earlier point, I think it's still a phase, right? And you're right. They could potentially build off of these things. Hey, if it's successful, hey, you know what? Maybe we have an annual horse challenge. Maybe we have an annual 2K tournament or whatever the case may be. But this can still, again, be the first building block for something that they continue to do along the way. Maybe they do get the 3-point contest next or whatever type of contest, moving forward as the summer progresses and this COVID situation continues.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA as we are rifling through a litany of different little storylines that are happening in the course of the pandemic to just try to keep you abreast of what's happening. So the NBA 2K player tournament ended over a few days ago. Devin Booker wound up being the winner. He took on his teammate, DeAndre Ayton. What were your thoughts as far as just the idea, the concept? Did you find it? Do you see success from something, as having this type of tournament happen over the number of days that it had taken for it to go through?
Yeah, I thought overall it was pretty good. So here's where I guess I would put on my negative hat, so to speak. While I didn't love, I think, some of the interaction with some of the guys, some of it was good, and we got some great content, from players and telling stories, especially with Booker and Ayton as teammates. That there's a natural dynamic that happened there. We spoke about it. I think it was offline, and I think I talked about it on Twitter as well. The first game that they showed with KD and Derrick Jones Jr., there was just not natural chemistry between those two guys, and they were kind of just mumbling and really kind of, I don't even want to say just like super casual conversation, but long pauses and spaces in between that. And I think what everybody wanted initially was just kind of see some trash talking and people getting hyped. Like Montrezl Harrell was great, Pat Beverly was great, Hassan Whiteside was okay, and like certain guys just have the personality.
The Harrell Sabonis matchup.
Yeah,
the Ayton Beverly matchup was really solid. Yeah.
But it's hard as they're trying to figure some things out. It's hard to say that they knew that this was just going to be amazing from jump. So there was some pitfalls in it. But I think my biggest takeaway is when you hear people these players complaining about the game, that's negative branding for 2K in general. But I will say this. Shout out to our friends at Dash Radio. It did make me want to pick up the sticks a little bit and play 2K myself. It kind of seems like, all right, what's the issues with this game? Like, what's the problems with it? Because I haven't played 2K in a couple of years now. I just kind of got sick of it after 2K18. But I didn't really play 2K19, and I just downloaded 2K20. But based on watching these guys play, and it got my excitement up a little bit. So maybe in some ways it helped the brand too, but it definitely hurt it as well. Especially that first game. I remember KD's like, this is terrible, and he doesn't do this, and and Booker.
Well, which
and Ayton,
KD? Which KD was talking to you, Shaw? Which KD was talking to us? Was it real KD or burner KD? Right? Like we still trying to figure that out. So.
It's wild. So overall, though, I think they had a good time with it, honestly and truly. I do believe fans enjoyed watching and just seeing people play video games like they do. Really and truly, there is a market for that. We've been over this, I think, a couple of times on our show. That is just where we're at in our society now. People like to watch other people play games, and when just some of your favorite players and celebrities, and you're seeing them do some of those kind of everyday things that you do as well too, it makes them a little bit more human and having the same frustrations with the game that us as regular fans and players of 2K may have as well too. So it definitely, I think, overall was successful, but it did have a few hiccups along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this was ESPN's initial attempt to try and, keep everybody basketball engaged. because this is their bread and butter right now. Is the fact that they would be televising, their Saturday night showcase game of the week, and they have games on Mondays, especially during these home stretches, they have games like Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, basically, like almost 3 days. So it's like almost 4 games a week. ESPN would be televising games. And then not to, mention TNT would have access on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well, too, NBA TV. So basketball would be all over the place. The fact that they've gotten, collectively they were able to get these guys and assemble them, I think is commendable. And props to, NBA and NBA 2K for figuring out a way to kind of put this together. I definitely think that, again, this is where the situation, tends to present itself in timing. What is it that you want people to take from this? What exactly is it are you gaining from this? I think a lot of those things are going to have to be, evaluated, in some other form. That if you want to do this and for it to be taken, I don't want to say it wasn't taken seriously. I think it was taken seriously. But I think the rollout and the production of this was in such a way where it's just like, you know what? If it's not going to come off like authentically, then maybe you should take some more time before you just roll this out. Because again, to your point.
Let me interject there. Let me interject there. So one of the things that I think it's important for our fans and listeners to know as well, too, you and I both had issues with Ronnie 2K. So, when you talk about making this thing viable,
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that if you are ESPN and you're putting this on your primetime network, then you need to have your primetime people on. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm saying, though, if your intention is to really get people to buy into the idea that this is how it's being done, right? Ronnie 2K doesn't handle the 2K League. Right? They've got credible people who do the play-by-play. We watched them in their NBA 2K 3-for-all showdown, right? Which got crazy recognition from their people on Twitch. I was thinking that was where they were going with this, right? And that's not what happened here. So the way that this kind of got presented, Shaw, and to your point when you were interjecting me, that's my point. Like, if people are just being now introduced to this, you're asking them to go from when I listen to Dave Pasch and or Mike Breen and Van Gundy and Jackson to now having like all of these little blips and things interrupting and stuff like that, and people it's like you're really trying to really hold on to the idea that we're just going to be forgiving of those things. And I just felt like, from a production standpoint, there could have been a better way to kind of roll this out so that the natural feel of the guys getting on there and playing, whether they wanted to talk smack or not talk smack, whatever, still could have been put in a way where ESPN could have had their commentators step in and kept people engaged, kept people lively on this, and not just only put it on the players to sell the idea that they really wanted to be about playing this game, regardless of what the outcome would have been.
Right. And that's where they definitely are going to go back to the drawing board and understand that, all right, here are some misses and here's where it's good. We talked about it initially a couple of weeks ago when this thing was launching off, that it might have been good to have some sort of announcing, as you maybe alluded to here a little bit, to kind of help this along. But with the games being pre-recorded in essence, I still don't know why you couldn't have got an announcer involved in that, so to speak. But that was a miss for sure. You realize some of these guys didn't really play the game as well. So I love Zach LaVine. He's like, I haven't played in X amount of years, haven't picked this game up. And, for the brand of 2K, that's not amazing. You just call somebody kind of out the blue, say, hey, you want to do it? All right, cool. But not that somebody's dedicated to the craft of it. And you realize that while it's fun to watch them play in some aspects, you realize as well, too, is like, hey, well, here's something we could beat them at. I think casual gamers are like, listen, this guy sucks. You feel like you can go out here and handle some of these dudes, who are playing, because they definitely don't have the control and the mechanics. And at the end of the day, they probably shouldn't. But, it's something that they need to be doing in passing. They're not professional gamers, and nor should they be considered as professional gamers. But as I said, there are things that made sense for it, a lot of things that didn't quite make sense. And if this situation continues to unfold, or if they do like the idea in general and decide to maybe do it again, maybe next summer, as something to present, then I think there's ways that they can definitely perfect this brand here a little bit than what we saw over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and just make sure that I wanted to, make sure I properly throw name out there. Scott Cole, who is the official NBA 2K play-by-play announcer, again, props to him because, that guy's got a natural voice, and it won't be long before we continually keep seeing him. But I would have loved to have seen him in the mix calling those games and things of that nature. I think it would have really been a benefit. And maybe just listen, the NBA, ESPN does their crossover, where they take their NBA commentators and cross them over with their NCAA basketball commentators. Like you'll get a, Dick Vitale combo with Mike Breen calling a NBA game or, calling a college basketball game or whatever the case may be. I think that would have been a great opportunity for something like that, a crossover effect where you take the top-notch people that are really, moving the NBA 2K to its premier brand and then 2K League to its premier brand. And then you having ESPN, throw some of their people in the mix, and their combination will help elevate that. I think that there was an opportunity to do that. Again, we can talk all day about how this can be rolled out and done differently, but my point was that I think that they could have taken a little bit more time if the intention was that they really want people to truly, completely buy into what they were intending to do. That being said, props to Devin Booker, who showed out, throughout the tournament, and DeAndre Ayton. Those two guys are 2K ballers. I'm sure that the 2K League will be calling them dudes out, quite early because, the Phoenix Suns right now are in no position to be contending in the Western Conference for any kind of playoffs should this season continue to be resumed. So with that being said, Shaw, let's go ahead and move over to some of the other important stuff that's taking place right now in the association. Adam Silver has indicated that May 1st will be the earliest that they will come back to the table and make a decision on on what is going to take place with regards to the rest of the season. I think that this is a good move by Adam Silver. He is not giving anyone the perception that the season is being canceled by any stretch of the imagination. And also, I think at the same time as well, too, he is not getting out ahead of where the country needs to be when it comes to the status of this pandemic and whether or not certain things, I think, have to obviously be in place where if the NBA is going to make decisions like this, it will not be looked at in a negative way. And I think that that's a smart play by Adam Silver, is not budging, not forcing anything to happen, at least over the next couple of weeks, so that people can actually focus their attention on the immediate needs that is going on right now and not be clamoring on whatever's supposed to be happening with the game.
Everything is still on the table, one way or the other. Continuing some sort of a bridge version, playoffs in one location, everything is still on the table. Cancellation is really a last resort, and he's going to utilize as much time to gather as much information as he possibly can to make sure that the league is in its best position to return to the fans and to the public. And we do want to crown a champion. They want to crown a champion. The players want there to be basketball. This is their livelihood. And sure, money comes into it and at the highest levels and at the root of everything that's taking place. But at the end of the day, these are people who just want to hoop. And I think everybody misses their basketball. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. And what types of decisions are being made, whether that is to bridge the season, make it 5 games, 7 games, no games, straight to playoffs, whatever. But I think Adam Silver is just taking his time to make sure that he has the most information he can from a public health and safety standpoint. One way or another, I don't believe we'll see anything in any iteration this season, at least for the 1920 season, where we'll see fans back in the stand. I just think that's going to be a little bit far-fetched, and we'll see what ends up happening but when the 2021 season begins, how late into the year it actually begins later on.
All right, our man Shams Charania is reporting that the NBA also is extending transactions moratorium indefinitely. And, listen, this to me goes kind of like in tow with, the NBA, to your point, Shaw. everything is still on the table.
You just got to take your time here. So no one's getting cut and released, or obviously trade deadline has already passed, or whatever the case could be. But no moves to be made in this interim time. So I guess to my knowledge as well, that means firing of coaches and things of that nature won't officially take place.
Yeah, it's kind of like the land. It's like kind of like the Trump administration basically saying we're going to postpone people evicting you for at least 60 days. So after the 60th day, on the 61st, you know what I'm saying? You get that you get that notice. He's like,
well, and let me retract, because again, this is clearly a player transaction. So coaches, general managers, and all that stuff can still take place within the front office. But player transactions, there's no movement going to be happening on that one way or another, and that's just the right thing to do. It's just too uncertain and too many variables taking place right now around the world, let alone the league itself. And this is just the right move, and I don't think anybody's disagreeing with what they decided to do.
That's probably not going to stop Draymond Green from from his recruitment.
All these IG chats. LeBron and Damian Lillard had a chat on IG the other night, and I don't know, man. I think there's all types of collusion.
There's a whole lot of banana boats floating right now. There's a whole lot of banana boats floating. We're gonna find out what happens as soon as this thing passes over. All right, the NBA has teams. The teams themselves have collectively come together, and they are petitioning the league to impose their will, to have them move the draft, which would normally be in the next couple of months once the season obviously ends after the finals, but to move the draft at least until August. Unlike the NFL, whose intent is to try and, was to have its draft and everything going on and stuff like that, regardless. Hey, NBA is like, nah, man. Let's move this out further.
Well, and that's what the hope is. There's no guarantee that it will happen. Teams want to be able to see players in person, and they're hoping that maybe with an August date over the summer, some of these workouts can potentially happen. And that will lead us into kind of our next tidbit regarding the draft in general. But right now, the teams just want to make sure that they have as much time to prep as possible. I guess it's different from the NFL, where, the season ended and they were probably already really, really deep into the midst of workouts and talking and connecting with players as it is.
Well, most of those kids had their pro days. A lot of those kids, had pro days going on. So they didn't necessarily have to go to the combine. I think the combine is a good central ground for general managers. But unlike basketball, there really isn't pro days, for basketball. It just seems like it's either the tournaments or it's the combine.
Yeah, the Chicago pre-draft camp, and then they had the thing in Plymouth or whatever as well too for, I think it's seniors, and IMG and all these various entities work guys out and give them opportunities to get in front of scouts and ownership, general managers and such. But I think right now with these teams, what they just want to make sure is that they have enough time to prep. Everything is in a loop. And while, yes, they have been scouting throughout the course of the year, we were about to get into the March Madness tournament. So players that could have potentially risen their stock didn't get that opportunity to do so. So now you can't get in front of people to work out as well either. And that makes things problematic, I think, from a talent evaluation standpoint for a lot of teams, because some teams still are a little bit more old school in method where they need to just be in front and they literally use the eye test. Watching a video isn't enough for them. So I think this is an acceptable request. Whether or not it gets granted, will that remains to be seen. But I think Adam Silver is trying to do the best he can to accommodate everybody that's involved with the league, from players to owners to potential draftees coming in. I think this is a situation that there will probably be some sort of extension on it. I don't know if it'll be August, but I think that the teams are probably going to get their way.
All right. And so, obviously that leads into the fact that, these teams are having those virtual meetings. So, because they're not going to be able to watch the workouts live. And I see where you're coming from, Shaw. I think that it is very interesting that the NBA is trying to find a way to not deprive these players the opportunity of taking in a moment like being drafted, but also from a business standpoint, I think they're trying to make sure that they shore up what will obviously be a limitation in the gap of time that is normally given when these type of things are happening in the off season are obviously going to be bum rushed through if this continues to move, this pandemic and this stay of being able to do anything is going to continue to push further and further into the following season. So, maybe it's prudent planning, but certainly I can understand the NBA's grievances. The owners agreeing to pay full salaries for all of for all their players until April. I mean, it's basically like, hey, I'm going to feed you lunch. We still got to talk about dinner, though. That's what that feels
100%.
like.
Yeah, I think, listen, the owners decided to let the players win this one, and everything at this point is some sort of political and kind of social move, so to speak. So they acquiesced and said, all right, no problem. But now when they come in May, they're probably not going to hear no crap about, full salaries for May. So we gave you this one, and now you have to kind of give us something back in return. So this is definitely chess and not checkers, as they say. And I think the owners understood that and said, all right, well, we'll bite the bullet here. But when May comes, be ready to cut us our money, run us our money, and run it back. I think in some cases for some players who've already been paid out. And I think that's the hardest thing. CJ McCollum, I think he noted on a podcast or a TV show, I'm not quite sure, I can't remember where, but he said, for whatever reason, and I understand this is all about money management, while a lot of these players live check to check, and they don't have the best fiscal and financial planning throughout the course of the year, and having to pay back money that they technically maybe have already spent in order to utilize for some is going to prove problematic. And that is something I think the owners and the league probably wanted to make sure they had some time to get these guys prepared for. So if you give them a couple extra weeks to try to get your proverbial affairs in order, if you have to run the league back some of that money, then you have a little bit more time to do so, and you can figure out what things you can cut even within your own household as necessary to make the budget work. I know it sounds crazy, for people who make millions of dollars, but not everyone's as responsible as they need to be. And sometimes, that just is what it is. So hopefully it doesn't put anybody in a situation where they're going to be in arrears. But, I think the league is doing the best it can, and the players need to go ahead and follow suit probably coming up in May.
I'll tell you this much. Don't be Owen James Dolan. So you don't want to be run. You want to run back James Dolan money, boy. I tell you that, right? So
he tested positive, so hopefully he's doing well. Obviously from a human standpoint, everyone do that, but I'm sure he's someone who probably would violate social distancing to get his money. He'd run right on the player's door.
Run it red, boy. Run that sucker red.
Right. It is May 2nd. What's up with my check? You know what I mean? So we'll see how this all plays out, man. But again,
if he can do it to Oak, if he can do it to Spike Lee, he may do it to you. So.
Facts.
All right. So the Chicago Bulls have hired an exec, Arturas Karnisovas. Listen, just in the name in itself tells you this man is going to complicate the game, and maybe for the better for Chicago. Who knows? But what do we know about Mr. Karnisovas?
Part of building a winner in Denver, at least in the scouting and the talent evaluation of what the Nuggets kind of have on their roster currently, the Bulls were pretty strategic, I think, in some ways, and maybe you can commend them for this. They didn't necessarily go after all the top guys, but they went after people in situations that were like kind of the number twos, so in Miami and in Toronto and in Denver, even in Indiana, they went after people who were the basically the assistant GMs or something of that nature to try to give those gentlemen an opportunity now to build a Bulls roster. And the Garpax era is finally coming to a close. Well, yes, there'll be special advisors and have whatever consultant roles in the team, but Karnisovas, he'll be the guy. He's looking for other people to bring in now as well too to try to fill out that rest of that staff. And I think the Bulls are heading in the right direction. Again, if any indication of what the Nuggets roster is right now, and while Jokic is the clear and elite superstar, remember they also had Nurkic as well too, and they had to move him because the two guys couldn't coexist. So they've been able to find bigs. They got Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, while he hasn't had a great year. But even getting Michael Porter Jr., as obviously that was more of a gift in my opinion, but they felt him and they made sure they made the selection. They got Bol this past year. They've made a lot of shrewd moves, and they have a lot of depth on their team and their roster. And I think people look around the league and see that and say, damn, these guys know what they're doing over there. So they couldn't get Conley away because he was pretty much locked in and loaded where he was going to be there in Nuggets. But Arturas gets to coming out and gets a chance to run his own shop, so to speak, in Chicago and see if he can get the Bulls in the right direction.
You got to appreciate Denver, man. They managed to roll out some very, very credible general managers and or executives, right? Toronto should be able to vouch for that very comfortably as well too. I like this move by Chicago. I think that two things really definitely need to happen. Chicago needs to appreciate that they are in a situation where I think the game has to be influenced externally, internally, right? They've tried, kind of building from the homegrown. They are incapable of coming out of the Jordan shadow, so to speak, and living in a Jordan bubble, so to speak. I think that this is one of the few organizations that can actually go out and highlight, the importance of the international game and some of the great players that could probably come in and elevate. Now, I'm not speaking about this in the same idea that we're talking about, say, Lauri Markkanen. He, to me, is an unknown, but maybe having an executive like Karnisovas will help him feel appreciative of the environment that he's trying to build to make international players comfortable, to want to play in Chicago. I think his ability to go and find talented players that can cohesively want to come together and not necessarily worry about the yesteryears and the greatness of the Bulls of the 90s and things of that nature, this may actually be a good thing. And to do that, you need a very heady general manager / executive come in and totally change that dynamic. And he may be one of the few people that's capable of doing it. It'll be interesting who he puts in place. It'll be interesting to see what kind of culture is totally being built around that. But I can't knock the Chicago Bulls for this, because this to me is a strong move being made about the direction I think they think Chicago really needs to be going in moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And really and truly, when you're looking at what Chicago is trying to do, they just need to be better than they have been in the last 10 to 12 years, so to speak. Even with Jimmy Butler and things of that nature and the Derrick Rose days, they never were able to get back to a certain level of prominence that they've wanted to, right? Boylen is already concerned himself now with the change in ownership, and the change in front office management, whether or not he will have a job. There were rumors and conversations about Markkanen, whether or not, depending on which way the wind blew on this, whether or not he would still be a part of what they're trying to do. He obviously had a terrible year, marred with some injuries, things of that nature, but his role in that scheme, in that system, it wasn't clearly defined, and he did himself no favors in that as well too. So I think more is definitely to come out of Chicago. They do have an interesting roster. I think there's some guys that have value. They're not going to move a guy like Kobe White, but like Levine and things of that nature, they have some pieces here that could potentially grow and develop into something, whether or not Markkanen stays on this team or not. Obviously, Wendell Carter Jr. as well too, a nice piece there that they have, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy either. So I think the Chicago team is in a unique position to go a lot of different ways, and I think as this gentleman comes in here, he can figure out who needs to stay, who's a part of the puzzle, and who's not. And you might start to see a fire sale, or maybe you won't. And maybe it's just a rebranding of kind of what they want to do from a culture standpoint. And maybe that starts with the coaching change, maybe in Boylen too. But it's all up in the air right now in Chicago. But I think better days are definitely to come.
All right. So finally, last bit of news to kind of throw out there for our listeners is regarding, and we can harken this back to where it all started when the NBA was pretty much at a standstill once the news broke out that Rudy Gobert was the first player to have tested positive for COVID-19, which then started this whole, domino effect of eventually the NBA postponing the season. Donovan Mitchell was basically the second person who was then identified as being having contracting the disease, or the virus, excuse me. And, a lot was up in the air about what was going on, whether or not, what had happened with Rudy Gobert and what had been reported in his reckless behavior of how he was treating the effects of this virus and what it was doing to people. And apparently, we're now understanding, like, listen, both of those guys have now recovered from the virus. But their friendship, if there really ever was one, their friendship is not recovered. And there are reports now that Donovan Mitchell is still very, very much upset with Rudy Gobert and how this whole thing has played itself out.
Bro, it's tough. It's tough. And that Utah locker room was once, just last year, was heralded as one of the best locker rooms in the league in terms of guys just understanding, believing in Snyder's system, and just liking each other. We don't know all the underlying things with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert here. And there's a very good, I say even a high probability that it all works out one way or another. But the fact that rumors are starting to surface regarding that this relationship may be unsalvageable, Donovan Mitchell may
I don't know,
request a trade
a
in Utah.
near-death disease. I don't know whether or not I'll probably want to play next to you. If I think a lot of this I think a lot of it is really predicated on what Gobert had been doing, what he was trying to do, and we still don't know the total, we don't know the total circumstance, but I can certainly understand with the way things are and how things have gone to such an extreme that, it may take a while, for you to be able to feel comfortable with somebody if you never were comfortable to begin with that person, to think that them coming back, you're going to feel good with them and stuff like that over what we're dealing with right now. It's pretty hard. Like right now, when people start talking to me, recklessly about doing stupidness that is against what I'm being asked to do, it doesn't make me look at you the same way that I seen you before this had gone down. I actually will then be very skeptical of you. And I'm not saying that this would be the end all be all, but I think that I wouldn't look at you as a person on my top tier friends list much longer if you don't take what I take seriously because of the effects of something like this that's going on. You know what I'm saying?
So, what I was saying is I just not quite sure where they're at. I mean, these two guys were pretty good, for all intents and purposes. And yeah, now the situation, the needle has definitely moved, as a result of it. The team, if they were really truly forced to make a decision, would probably, and as rumors are, would probably like to move Gobert before they'd move Donovan Mitchell, but don't know what the return could potentially be on that. And it's gotten people buzzing. The aforementioned Knicks are interested if Donovan Mitchell were to request a trade or something were to come about. And it was still very early.
Like the vultures they are.
We don't even have games back yet. Yeah. We don't even have games back yet to really be overly concerned about it. But it is something to keep an eye on, in this situation. And again, for a locker room that was once very, very tight, collegial in some aspects, I think as some people alluded to. And I know a couple of people in the Utah area, and they are not pleased the fact that people are trying to break this combination up. Think about all the stuff that we hear about, Milwaukee and Giannis, and Giannis is going to go to Golden State or whatever. The Milwaukee folks hate to hear that crap. They don't want it. They're not even trying to entertain it. And they say people who are not in our city don't know what the state of it is. And a lot of these comments and conversations are coming from outside of Utah right now. So we need to really wait and kind of press pause on this. But again, we do have to watch it. And it is a little bit of news if somebody like Mitchell could potentially request a trade or breaking up of basically the team's two best players and most prominent figures, as they stand right now, man. So big things happening. But we have to wait and see how it's all going to play out as always.
Well, we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled and see where that is. And listen, Rudy had to come out and shell out $500,000 in order to say I'm sorry. I'm wondering how much he's going to probably have to shell out to tell Donovan. You know what I'm saying? Please don't send me packing. You know what I'm saying? So we'll keep our eyes out for that, man. Awesome show altogether, man. So many different topics that we ran through today, but it was great, man. It was great to kind of really fill in the gap, so to speak, and kind of weigh in on a lot of these little tidbits and nuggets of things that are going on with the NBA. It's such an extraordinary space that we're in right now.
It's different, and we just got to continue to roll with the punches. But we'll continue to bring the content as long as Lee continues to push it out. And we're innovators ourselves here as well too. So I don't want to sell ourselves short at all. We love the NBA, and we love our fans and listeners even more. We want to make sure we bring you stuff that you guys want to hear and discuss as well too. So let us know. Are there some different topics and conversations out there that you'd like us to be having as we push this thing forward and all try to get through this? But we are all in it together, and you're going to continue to hear us say that in each and every show amidst this COVID-19 situation. But we will get out of it, man. But as always, it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to do it again, next week or the next week after that and the next week after that.
Absolutely, brother. For The Baseline, Cali, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.